So just to set the scene from where we've come from this morning, we obviously saw Robbie Kenner in his sort of amazingly insightful movie, and last night Robbie accused me of putting him on a pedestal, but I think we found out all day that Robbie genuinely has made significant change in the US consciousness and the world consciousness for food animal production and some of the challenges that that brings forward. And then we moved through with Bob Martin, Dave Love, Megan, and stunningly, the sort of epidemiological aspect of some of the challenges that our food production is bringing. And talking to Dan's own journey through how he changed his buying system and Oren changed their buying system. And what's become more interesting to me more recently is we've got some great farmers that can do the right thing, that are able to take farmed animals without abusing them, to raise them to the point that they can be turned into meat if that's your choice. We do have processing facilities out there, and more recently some of my conversations, and it's quite interesting because I'm a guy who really focuses on farms, but the keynote from processors is if you book early enough and you turn up on time and you pay, generally you can find a slot in a processing plant. But one of the key parts of this conversation is those systems were designed for when there were 3 billion people on this planet. Those systems were designed for populace way below, maybe 1/4 the size we've got now. The bottom line right now is we have to feed the people we've got. And I was so pleased to hear the conversation about we have to eat less meat. That's a reality. Because the way we're producing that meat right now is unsustainable. It's unsustainable for the environment, it's unsustainable for the planet, and it's unsustainable for the animals within it because they're constantly sick. But how do we feed these 9 billion people? We know we can produce it. And it was interesting to hear Dan, Rosenthal, and Oren discuss the two separate systems here of how they want to procure meat. And this panel particularly will focus on those particular areas. So, I mean, let's come across and just sort of introduce ourselves a little bit and talk about our space in the food system, if we could. Could we start with you, Paul?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Paul Saville. I have a company called Saville Foods Corporation, and we're actually 3 companies. We have a broadline food service distribution company called Saville Food Service, and we sell probably 1,500 items to restaurants. Anything a restaurant would buy, from condiments to paper goods to cheese to meat, we sell. That's the first entity we have, and that is the largest of the entities. The second is a company by the name of Deli Brands of America, and they're a processor of meat products based in Baltimore City. About $25 million company, so it's nice size, mid-size processor, mostly making deli meats, but we also cut steaks, veal, pork, lamb in that facility. And then the third entity is a new entity. I call it the Eats Enterprises, but basically about 4 years ago, I started to, I'm a reader, and I read Michael Pollan's book Omnivore's Dilemma, and then In Defense of Food, and I really started getting into what we should be doing with food, and I'm not a food guy, I'm a lawyer, and I got into the family business, and my wife even said, this is the first time you've ever really been interested in food. And it's true, I was only interested in food as it was something we sold. But after reading these books and getting into it, I thought that Saville Foods should start selling and promoting locally grown sustainable products. And at about the same time, a concept came to my attention called Baltimore Eats Magazine, which Baltimore Eats Magazine was a proponent, a promoter of local sustainable foods in the Baltimore area, promoting chefs and restaurants that sold locally grown products. So I saw the synergies between what I thought was the right thing to do and our capabilities as a food service distributor and a meat cutter and a processor. So I kind of tried to kill all the birds with one stone and try to put all these things together. So about 3 years ago, we started sourcing locally grown products and introduced this to my management team, who is pretty much conditioned on we buy what our customers want. And as long as those warehouse slots move, we will sell it. So this was a little bit of a change engine in that, you know, most of who we sell, they sell industrial agricultural products. I mean, we sell lots of cream cheese, we sell lots of bagels, we sell lots of corned beef. We had to make something happen here. We had to go out and say, you know, is there a demand for this? And so we've partnered with some good people. We do, right now at this point, we do locally grown produce, we do eggs, we do chicken, and we do beef. We've partnered with Grayson. You'll see the next panel. Andy is here from Busboys and Poets, so we have a good relationship with them, and we've been able to procure and sell locally grown products. And so that's kind of the genesis for how we got involved with this, and we are continuing to push the envelope to try to tap into what our customers want, try to price it the way they want it, which is a real challenge. I'm sure we'll get into obstacles later, but here's what I think. I think that as a broadliner, we have a competitive advantage in bringing down the price of the products that you farmers grow. Because if we can put your product on the truck with $1,000 or $2,000 of other items, whether it be cleaning supplies or cheese or other things, your product standing alone, we don't have to make the margin that we do if that was all we were selling. And if somebody wanted, let's say, 6 steaks, and that's all we were selling, perhaps we'd have to charge a little more if we were selling everything to that restaurant. Our goal is to sell the restaurant everything. So kind of that is our value proposition on the local meat, the sustainable agriculture.
Paul, thank you. Arby, do you want to speak to that? Do you want to speak to some of the challenges from your perception and where you're at?
Good afternoon. My name's Artie Alifiginis, and I own the Capital Meat Company. We're a local beef, lamb, veal, pork, chicken processor and distributor. We've been involved in our local farm program for 4 years. Actually, Orrin Molovinsky was instrumental in getting us introduced and going on it. And I was listening to the panel that was sitting here prior, and Brant and David were both talking to logistics and delivery problems that restaurateurs and clubs and hotels suffer from the farm to the table. I listened to Dr. Wisnant talking about whole carcass and the small, very, very small number of restaurateurs that can afford to buy a whole carcass, that can process it, that have a diversified enough menu to run all of the end cuts, the chuck and the round cuts, and the middle cuts through. And I heard Gary talking pretty much the same thing. Actually, Gary, I've been to his farm. It really is quite an operation. So the Capital Meat Company is the old-fashioned butcher, processor operation that all of these farmers and sources were talking about. We buy 10 whole carcasses of beef a week locally from Piedmont Ridge. Chris Birch, who I was hoping to be here and could have added some stuff to this former panel, but unfortunately one of his barns burned down yesterday. So he had to deal with that. But we process 10 carcasses a week, and we buy between 3,500 and 4,000 pounds of chuck meat to grind for local farm ground beef, and also to pull flat irons and terrace major and chuck eye rolls and all of the chuck cuts that are really popular today. So that's really who we are about. As far as a local farm program, we founded ourselves in the belief, and our local product constitutes probably 10 to 15% of what we do on a weekly basis. It's a smaller part of our business, but it seems like it gets 50% of our attention, for sure. I believe, our whole team believes in sustainably raised local product. We believe in sourcing food out, knowing where it comes from. We believe in that chain that when you go to your source, he can tell you who that particular steer, where it came from, who its mom and dad were. We believe in all of that stuff, and we also believe that this is the way it's going to go, and this is the way it needs to go. Most of our, actually all of the animals that we buy are grass-fed and grain-finished, because I'm an old meat man, and grass-fed to me means leaner, tougher, chewier, and I like the savory aspect of beef. So we buy grain-finished beef. It's got great marbling, grades out choice, really nice product. So I'm at that end of the chain. You know, we're old kind of meat geeks. We process and we deliver local product, and we answer the problem of how can I get it, when can I get it, where can I get it from. That's how we founded our local farm program, to answer that situation.
Thank you. Seth?
Hi, I'm Seth Cooper, White House Meats. We're a small, young company. We started out this year. One of the things that makes us unique on this panel is that we got into this to only deal with local and sustainable and pastured meats, and that's what we're promoting, and with our main goal of making that more accessible. I came from the world of engineering, and I was a meat eater and a buyer, and very interested in local and sustainable agriculture and meat. And this started from me searching out and buying stuff for myself, and so I was dealing with farms and butchers and slaughterhouses, and eventually a group of friends, and it grew a little bit bigger, and we're looking at it as from the eyes of engineers and seeing where different efficiencies could be improved in the logistics that people are all talking about today, and thought we should start a business to really promote this and help make it more accessible. Primarily, we're dealing directly with consumers right now, with an eye of growing to sort of kind of the more group and restaurant buying programs and more institutional things. Of course, the main challenge is competing on price, which I think we'll get into. And in order to do that, we really need to have the best efficiency we can. I guess the other big challenge is that we're not doing our own processing. We're dealing with processors of the size of Michael's, and it's sometimes difficult to find really good processors that really work with you on getting the exact cuts you need and really helping you meet those kinds of efficiencies. But we're working towards that, and we're hoping to help solve some of these problems.
Yes, thank you. And finally to you, Michael, as a slightly different part of this supply chain. You're predominantly just a slaughter plant and a primary fabricator.
Yeah, finer processing and stuff. How's everybody doing today? I'm Michael Rodriguez. I'm Director of Operations at Fauquier's Finest Country Butcher Shop in Bealton, Virginia. We provide services for farmers in the area that includes slaughter and cutting and packaging and labeling and the whole works, all custom, 100% the way you want it. I got into this jumping out of carpentry 5-6 years ago. I jumped into it as a sausage maker. And just went on there since then, just kept going. Worked every aspect of the business until I got to this point. I get to come share my knowledge with you guys.
Thank you. So speaking to sort of Dan and Oren's point, looking at some of this consolidation situation and how we get to you, and then listening to the ranchers, speak to me a little bit, Paul, about what we can ask these ranchers to do to make it easier for you to make your customers happy, and some of the challenges you might see in achieving that space.
So the challenge is how to get it to the table in the most efficient way. So I guess I was ranked below butchers, or I guess the middleman is the dirt of the earth. But we actually provide a service that's valuable, and sometimes the farmers don't value that service, and but really it's the critical link to get that product to the table. So the first thing that I would ask is that to put a value on it. Even if you're delivering it yourself, it costs something. So if you miss that part of it, you're going to lose money. The great thing about Artie's company and our company is, we are logistically efficient in procuring product and getting that product to the marketplace and then getting it to the table. So we can do it probably less expensive than a guy in a single truck because we have more things to put on it and we have more trucks in the marketplace. So actually we can pick the product up if it's within a radius of our geography. So for example, Savil's geography is from Philadelphia in the north to Roanoke in the south, Eastern Shore, Maryland to Western Maryland. So anywhere within that footprint, we could pick up the product and bring it to our warehouse and then further sell it to the end user, the restaurant. The other thing is that remember that we have over 1,000 customers. So we have ready and willing customers that you may need to go with us to sell those customers, but you don't have to go and find them all. And then you don't have to go deliver them one at a time. We open a marketplace to you that you perhaps don't know about. And yes, you can facilitate the sale of that product because the best advocate for your product is the rancher, is the grower. And the disadvantage of a Savile is that we have 1,500 to 1,800 items to sell. So we're not going to take a special attention on one product, but we bring in products that have a marketing engine that can help us sell the product and then bring you into the marketplace so that you can sell it.
So I'm the guy with the single truck, and I would say that the advantage there, and one of the things that we emphasize is that every farm that we deal with is a farm that we have personally visited and met with farmers and and are vouching. We don't sit behind a seal or certifications. We say that we've seen this and these are the practices, and we have high standards for animal welfare and sustainability. But at the same time, it's true, and it's harder even on a lower volume to meet those kinds of efficiencies. And when you really need to use the whole animals to make this local thing work, that becomes more of a challenge for us. But we hope that maybe the more personal nature and and putting out our brand as its own sort of certification can make up some of the difference.
Hey Seth, in 1932 we had one truck too, so yeah. you'll have 40 by the time I'm gone.
And from my experience, going to look at farms becomes quite tedious when you're trying to sell at 2 o'clock in the morning. So I think a seal can add some transparency, particularly when customers are being more cynical. Artie, how do you feel about sort of what we're...
I think the farmer's biggest problem is organization. There's co-ops, there's farm to table that might have 25 or 30 different farmers that are all organized under one umbrella, but they're still acting like independent contractors. And I was talking a little earlier with Emily, one of the gals that works for the Animal Welfare Approved organization, and I was telling her a great example of that would be Cervena venison, which every chef here knows what Cervena is. It's a national label of New Zealand under which every venison farmer in New Zealand that's worth his salt lives up to certain feed standards, welfare standards, raising standards, and they all collectively put their product under one label, and therefore they have power, and they have economy, and they have something that's really good to sell. From what I've seen so far, I mean, I've got a great farm, I've got a great farmer, but he's just one guy. He's got so many animals. I'm kind of maxing him out right now. So I'd say that the biggest challenge for this panel sitting up here is all of them know what they're doing. They're just doing it for themselves. They have to organize themselves somehow. That's how this is going to get to the next level.
Michael, what are you thinking?
I think logistics is 100% of, and I deal with farmers on a day-to-day, minute by minute basis doing what I do, and I think logistics is 100% of their problem. The majority of them have great products. They have great, they have people skills. They could sell it. It's when they find that buyer out there, it's getting it to them, and that's where the logistics comes in. It's necessary. It has to be there, because you can't have. And Warren says this all the time. You can't have the farmer delivering the meat because he's got to be farming. It's just the way it is. That's the biggest problem I run into with my clients, with my customers.
It was interesting, Paul, that you spoke to a farmer delivering product uses fuel and fuel costs, and it is time. I mean, what is the sort of cost in terms of maybe cents per pound that you think it costs for you to move meat around the place?
Well, I can't do it in cents per pound basis, but I can tell you that it probably costs $35 to $40 per stop to stop that truck. And I don't care if it's the store next door, it's still stopping the truck. So $35 to $40. So take whatever you sell and put the margin on that and figure out how you can cover that $35 to $40 cost.
I know Cisco just announced there's a minimum of a $500 drop. I think they won't take an order below $500.
Right. Our minimum is $400.
Yeah, to cover that cost.
Right.
But in terms of where we're at with some of these challenges, have we got a feeling here we need to recreate the wheel, or is it possible for this sort of alternative system to hook in to what we're seeing on the stage? And if that is possible, how do we achieve that? And I sort of asked about next step, but just keep drilling into that. What does that first contact look like? What are you expecting the farmer producer to look like? Because we accept you've got the skills to process it, to move it to the customer. How does the farmer need to come to you? What do they look like? What are you looking for from that farmer?
For me?
Yep.
Well, first of all, that's why I'm here. I'm here to learn about what you do and to meet you and to say, hey, I'm willing to do this. And I don't talk bad about competition, but Cisco, US, and PFG, they're the big boys. They'll sell it if you contract to sell it to, and there's a customer that demands it. But here we are, three locally grown, local family businesses willing to get that product off the farm and bring it to the restaurant. And that's kind of special, and we have the capabilities to do it. So, and we probably could advise you of the way to do it profitably, if you want to listen. And we'll listen too. But the truth is that most people don't really know what it costs to get that product to the restaurant. So here we have willing people, and we are efficient, and we can get it to the restaurant.
So what does that farmer look like to you, Artie?
I'm sorry?
What does that farmer look like to you? How's that farmer coming to you?
I don't have very many farmers that are coming to me. We source our own product. We go out, we visit farms. Again, I see a very wide variety of breeds and operations. Gary was talking about, he's a certified organic guy. His costs are obviously a lot higher. I deal with a lot of guys that could be certified organic, but don't choose to go that route because of the expense of actually getting the certification. They're 99% of the way there. This is locally sourced produce has been around for 30 years. I remember Clyde's Restaurant Group used to send a truck down to someplace in Virginia and load it up with local produce. And this is probably 25 years ago. Locally, sustainably raised fish is relatively easy to get. Produce is easy. Dairy, chicken. Andrew, you and I talked about it on the phone a little bit, about the inconsistencies of the chicken. But beef is really doing it the way we do it, buying whole carcasses, selling 10 pounds and 20 pounds at a time is in its infancy. It's just getting started. There are probably 100 great farms that have great product here in the area that nobody knows about. And these guys are taking their product to farmers markets. They're taking it to DuPont Circle on Sunday. Guys like Bev Eggleston is trying to get out there and promote his product, and guys like that. So the product is there. The business, the reception is here with all of you chefs and restaurateurs that want to get next to the product. It's just the organization is a little lacking. So if you want to go out and find a great farmer with great meat, you can. But logistically, as Mr. Rodriguez was talking about, it's just very, very difficult to get it from there to here. And that's really, logistics is half the battle that we work on all the time. I think we've got it solved, but that's the problem. But beef is lagging way behind the rest of the sustainable business. Beef and chicken, I think. And chicken, I think the biggest obstacle to chicken is getting a great guy that will sell you the same size chicken all the time, free range, sustainably raised, that type thing. You know, the organic chickens we buy, they range between 2.5 and 4 pounds. So I get a 30-pound box with 8 pieces or 9 pieces or 10 pieces or 12 pieces. It's all great chicken, but you know, it's differently sized. And the quantities are relatively limited. Price is too high. And there are no real local sustainable chicken guys here, but that's what I think the real problem is in sourcing farmers.
Michael, from your point of view, looking at the slaughter and process part of it, we do hear a lot that slaughter plants are to blame. I think you've been blamed for global warming, World War IV. I mean, how do you feel about folks saying that there's not enough processing, there's not enough this? Where does that sit with you?
I disagree. I disagree completely. I think we're a small facility. I've got 15 people max most of the time. We do 26,000 pounds of meat a week, and that's, you know, all the way through the building, you know, processing, finer processing, sausage making, brining, all that stuff. And I think when you get into the perspective of everything's the same, everything's, you know, every fillet is going to weigh the same amount, it's good from a packaging aspect and from a pricing aspect. It makes your life a whole lot easier when it's like that. But on the other end, it's not what everybody's going for, I don't think. It's not the everything's raised on a farm, everything's natural, local. I don't think you can accomplish that without running those regiments that they do on the chicken plants and stuff like that. Keeping them all solid, keeping them not, one's, you know, chickens have personalities. One's going to move more than the other one. It's going to be fatter. It's going to be, you know, it's going to be like that unless you can find them. And that's what we're trying to avoid, I think.
I think when you talk and you ask about you know, reinventing the wheel and the supply chain, the hardest thing is the final end, dealing with the consumer and changing consumers' behaviors. I mean, there is people go to farmers markets most of the time. It's just for a special occasion, and they know they're spending a premium on it. But you know, people buy meat at a certain really low price from grocery stores and or from restaurants, and so like what Artie's mentioned, most of what we do directly to consumers is selling 10 and 20 pounds at a time, a mixture of meats, and by pairing high-end steaks with burger, bringing that average price down to something that's more palatable. I mean, with chicken and with beef especially, you can't really compete on price at all with mass-produced stuff. And in terms of farmers coming to us, I think it's generally that farmers hear about what we're doing and come to us to sell as an alternative to them bringing to farmers markets, because farmers don't necessarily, or not all farmers necessarily want to be spending their Saturday or Sunday, sitting and hawking their goods, and any outlet where they can still make money, right? We do deal with a lot of farmers that aren't making money. That's attractive to them. So trying to expand that market, get to more consumers through whatever means, going to have to find a way to be competitive in marketplaces.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we've heard on and off with most of the panels is that we have this strange paradigm where we have to be slightly conventional in some of our outcomes if we're going to get this product into the mainstream. But we've got some challenges in the production side of it in terms of consistency of product, size of product coming to market, because we have been used to this mechanically produced product, which is why it started in the first place. So just to wind up as we head into the Q&A, and it is, I think it's sort of been reiterated that we have lots of challenges in front of us. Looking forward, let's say a year from now, do you see your business growing in terms of the local high welfare sustainable product, or where do you see that market heading?
Every year it grows. It's a very small part of our business as well, but every year we sell a little more, and the produce program, like Artie said, they've got it down pretty well. So, and with the local produce, it's not all uniform either, but there's an expectation it shouldn't be. Like the happy chickens. I mean, the happy chickens aren't all going to be the same size too, and I think that that's okay. And I think to a certain extent, and I think that there's a certain expectation to the restaurateur that's really devoted to the movement that it's not going to be all the same. But I just want to go back to your conventionality. If we can, as a group, market it better, we can all get the price. I mean, most of us are beat up for 1 penny on everything, but whether it's the restaurateur, it's the grower, it's the distributor. So if we can market it on our menus and say, this is Farmer John's greatest chicken, happiest chicken ever, and this is why you should pay more, and I think consumers are now getting used to that. And if they'll start paying more and you can sell more volume than we can, and it goes all the way down and up the chain.
Michael, you remember Dominic D'Ermo singing chickens down at Dominique's? Dominic D'Ermo owned Dominique's restaurant. I don't know how many old timers remember Dominique's. It's now Founding Farmers down on Pennsylvania Avenue. And he used to raise chickens and play music to them in the hen houses, and he swore up and down that it was a happier chicken.
And science would prove him right.
Chickens.
Science says if you play chickens the right music, they'll become calmer.
Personally, I feel that cows have feelings and chickens don't. But anyway.
I'm a chicken guy, so I'm going to vote for the chicken. Okay. Michael.
Well, I took over the facility, or took over Director of Operations of the facility 16 months ago, and I think just everything has improved since then. And my farmers would vouch for me for the most part. I think that 2012 is going to be my biggest year. I'm going to get all my certifications ready, and it's going to be there. It's going to be awesome. So yes, I think it's going to grow.
I'll let you know if you pass your audit, if that's okay.
Yeah, well, we have to. I mean, it's
no choice.
Our whole business is sustainable, and even according to our plan, we're moving into the second phase of it, and it involves a lot of growth. So I hope so.
Appreciate it. Do we have any questions for the panel?
Nobody likes to be first. So nobody likes to be first.
Yes, I'm Angelique Chow, writer of the blog From Animal to Meat. There's been a little bit of discussion about farmers markets up there, and I can sense definitely skepticism about it. And I'm wondering if you think that that trend has peaked, if you all agree with, I think, one person who said that it's really just special occasion purchases, and it's not going to be something that consumers are going to really take hold of as a normal way to get their meat or their dairy. And same thing for CSAs, which is another direct from farmer to consumer option. Do you think those just are going nowhere, or what about that?
That might have been my comment. I feel that one of the problems, communication problems between distributors and wholesalers and farmers is that farmers think like retailers, we think like wholesalers. So I think that if a farmer can take a pound of ground beef and get $6 at a farmer's market, he wants to sell it to me for $5.50 so I can get $6. Well, I can't get $6 for ground beef. So my experience is that, that there's a little bit of a communicative breakdown between retail thinking and wholesale thinking. And that's why my comment about, I'm not disparaging farmers market. I mean, I think they're awesome, and I like going to them. But I think from a business standpoint, if a farmer thinks like a retailer, he has a tough time selling a guy like me who's a wholesaler distributor. So that's what my comment was about.
Also for meat, different than produce coming to farmers markets, there's that processor step. The farmer can't really, in most cases, can't process themselves. So it's still going from farmer to processor back to farmer's market. So it's the same number of steps really as if it went from farmer to processor to distributor, or farmer to processor to market.
Yeah, I think ideally we'd want farmer drops off at processor, distributor picks up from processor, that's it. I think ideally that's the way we'd want the chain to go.
I have a question following your question. If we got to feed 55 million people and our farmers market's only open half a year, and we go back to our point that a lot of families have got 2 jobs and all those sort of things, I think we've got to have a diversity of solutions. I think farmers markets are in amongst that space, and they do a great job of reconnecting people with their food. But the bottom line is I have to feed this school. Sodexo every day has to provide 3 sets of meals for this food. So I think it's this entire message from today. I think there are a number of solutions that are going to help us get to that space. And I would argue with you, Michael, that we have to have that straight line in every circumstance. But if we're going to feed this school, that straight line has to exist.
Exactly. That's exactly what I mean.
Hi, how are you? I'd like to ask a question about pricing. As a restaurateur, I know that the pricing for sustainable meats has been a little bit of a challenge, and we've had decades and centuries really decades actually of unsustainable factory farming, and the pricing pressures that have created those types of prices for many years. But we don't really have a big track record as far as this form of a more sustainable approach. But every farm is different, and the economics are different for every farm. How do you, as a restaurateur, for example, know what's the best value that you're getting in order for you to pass that on to the consumer? That's been a big challenge for us.
Well, there's been an advent, I would say, of new cuts that are traditionally, very traditionally, retail cuts. When my mom used to go into the Safeway and the Giant, she would buy chuck cuts, pot roasts, top blade roasts, stuff like that. Well, in Europe, traditionally that stuff has all been center of the plate worthy. Not here in the States. Only in the past maybe 15 years have we started using top blade steaks, terrace majors, top rounds, knuckles, flat bottom rounds, stuff like that. Everybody knows about ribeyes, strips, tenderloins, hip meat, top and bottom sirloin meat. So first part of my answer to your question would be that you have to look at a variety of cuts and using them in such a way that it's a center of the plate type deal. And then the second part of my answer would be, and the panel before us spoke at length about it, would be portion control. All of my guys, I got steakhouses from the biggest steakhouse, BLT Steak. They've downsized the sizes of their steaks. Clyde's Restaurant has downsized the size of their burger. Everybody that I talk to, the guys that are kind of on the ball with this stuff is that you downsize the portion size, you look for creative cuts, utilize more of the whole animal, and stuff like that. So that's would be my answer to using sustainable meat would be to get real creative with it.
I think the other part of that is you got to market it and you got to educate your own customers too. If you're serving something that you're paying a premium for because it's sustainable, say that on your menu, say that on a sign in front of your restaurant, and say the name of the farm, and maybe a little blurb about why you're serving something sustainable, and that should help as well.
I would say that an average price for a locally raised, all natural, sustainable ground beef, freshly ground, an average price would be around $4 to $4.25. $4 to $4.25 a pound.
If you're getting something
if
that
you're buying a lot of quantity, you get a better price. If you're buying 20 pounds a week, then you get a higher price. But I would say that would be a nice in the middle.
But the reason you're seeing a range is because there's a range of products. There's grass-fed products, there's dry-aged products, and so the question is, what are you looking for?
What is dry-aged ground beef, Seth?
Well, some places will dry-age the entire side, and then the ground beef will be the trim.
Well, everybody, when you slaughter a carcass, and Mike will tell you this, it hangs in a holding cooler until it gets broken down. Don't get me started on dry-aged beef.
Yeah, I know that's a shady area. I was smiling when you brought
let's not
that
go.
up.
We're going to have a processes argument over dry-aged.
Really?
And
the range of products out there.
Yeah,
that's why you're seeing the range of price. Not all sustainable
point.
beef is created equal. So when you're trying to get the best price, the question is, what's the best product? How far down the path of sustainable do you want to claim that you are? Do you want to just claim all natural? Do you want to claim organic? Do you want to claim grass-fed?
If I can just end this whole ground beef thing. In America, we have a special way of doing grind. In Europe, we call it mince, and basically it is the trim, because we're tight. We don't like to grind whole muscle and turn it into burgers, because that's too expensive. In America, we take a whole muscle, which we could use for something else, then we grind it and make burgers. That's going to be interesting. But I think your price range, from our perspective, and we've just done some research onto pricing across the country, it's anywhere between $3.95 at the bottom and $7 at the top. Now that depends where you are and what the price will tolerate. But we're in a new market. So price elasticity is being exercised in this market because the market isn't leveled yet. But if I can just make a point that's very dear to my heart, and we heard it this morning, externalizing costs. Grass-fed, pasture-raised, organic, sustainable, high welfare is not expensive. It's expensive in dollars. It is not expensive in in terms of what damage the other products are doing to our environment, to our society, and the animals that are produced in that system. And I think what we've got here today is this conversation on how we take that forward. But it was a great dialogue. So can we take one more question?
Hi, thank you for your comments. My question is about, right now it seems like a lot of what you're talking about is creating innovative new systems to connect the markets and the producers. What opportunities do you see in actually accessing new markets? A lot of the conversation is about customers who tend to be your high-end or affluent customer as well as your restaurants. Are either any of you experimenting with opportunities to tap into markets that are previously overlooked but have a high need for healthy and environmentally friendly foods, as well as joining a lifestyle that supports that outside of just their eating practices? Do you have any experience? Do you see market opportunity, or is the cost simply too high?
Well, again, the more you sell, the less expensive the price of product will be over time. So typically, the market for these products are in the high-end restaurants, and many of them revolve around chefs that are very talented, are able to use most of the cuts of meat and bring the costs down. So, so will there be a market for the family-style diner, for the carry-out? Well, the cost needs to come down. So over time, that will happen, the more volume that the farm is able to get to the table logistically efficiently.
Another question?
I'm Melissa Kogut from Chefs Collaborative. This sort of goes back to cost, and one of the things that we're grappling with is this notion of value chains where everybody along the chain is getting a fair price, and I'm just wondering what the considerations are for ensuring that. And I guess it is a question from the end user's perspective, not to be sure that the farmer is not gouged, to be sure the distributor is getting a fair price. And have you had experience thinking everybody kind of pooling their ideas and interests in that way?
Sounds like Occupy the Stockyard.
I think that competition always controls price gouging. I think when there's several of something, that it's always controlled. I'm not going to, if somebody's got the same product out there, I'm not going to purchase it for 10 cents more just because I like the guy more. It's all based off competition, just like it is in anything else, any other business. That's my opinion anyway.
Well, I've been doing this for 40 years, and my reputation is probably the single most important thing to me outside of my family. And, I think that, and I speak for all of us, our philosophy is figure out what our cost to market is, put a fair profit on it, and go down the road with it. If you're a big enough organization and you have a singular relationship with a supplier, I would suggest you ask for an audited program where you can negotiate a markup range on things, box in, box out, processed, things like that. And then on a yearly or bi-yearly basis, you go down and you audit the program to make sure that you're getting prices that you should. So that's to your benefit. To your supplier's benefit would be that you have a singular relationship with them and you don't shop. So there's two different things. You either have 3 or 4 suppliers and you shop it and you're relatively meaningless to all of them, or you develop a singular relationship with one guy and mean the world to him.
And we're very lucky. Most of us in this room are families, family businesses, and that are able to sustain their businesses. So, my company's been around 80 years next year. We're the fortunate ones. There aren't a lot of us left, and most of you in the room are family businesses. We know what our costs are. At each level of the supply chain, we have different models. One of the things we do is we collaborate and we share our models. We know what the restaurant needs to make. They know what they need to make. We know what we need to make. The farmer knows what he needs to make to sustain himself. So if we can have that dialogue and share that information, and we were willing to do that, we can all make a living and survive and sustain this and grow this.
I have a comment and then a question to the panel. From the producer standpoint, the biggest struggle that we have is a commitment of the whole animal, and that's what makes the pricing structure so complicated. And if we had a commitment of not just the whole animal, but a commitment of X amount a week, where all the cuts are going, it seems to me that the purveyors like yourself could buy it. The more we sold, the cheaper it could get. And what you guys bring to it is a sales force to help us get rid of the other cuts. What is the biggest challenge in selling the other cuts, especially if you can have a guaranteed volume?
Grinding.
That's the biggest challenge, is grinding?
Yeah, I mean, when you take a whole carcass, everybody wants the middle cuts. Everybody will buy a ribeye and a strip and a tenderloin or a short loin, and the hip cuts, the top hip, you know, the top sirloin and bottom. That middle is the easiest part to get rid of to an HRI house. The toughest part are the rounds and the chucks. And so if you have a grinding operation, you sell fresh, either local or whatever, just fresh ground beef on a daily basis, and you sell enough of it, then that topples that obstacle, Brand.
Not only that,
what is an HRI?
Pardon?
You said an HRI house?
Hotel Restaurant Institution. That's an old term. I'm sorry, guys. Right. Restaurant.
Oh, I was going to say added value products. Like at our shop, we do sausages, all different sorts of varieties, and that's another way to get a lot of money out of the stuff that would most of the time go for nothing, you know, as far as burger goes.
It is a challenge, though. Brantley's right. I mean, we have that challenge. Actually, it goes back to Andy's question, you know, so how do you bring down the price of the ground beef? Well, if all the other cuts are used, then that brings down the price of the ground beef. So, so if you just buy one thing, then everything else is going to cost a lot more. So if we can round it out and buy those carcasses, and we have the capabilities of breaking them and cutting them up and making steaks out of them, we both have that capability. So we can buy whole carcasses and break them down and do that.
Do we have another question to round this off? We're doing really well at getting rid of questions here. So just to bring this in, my own experience sort of 7 years ago when I trogged a whole pig from North Carolina to Austin, Texas, and we did a yield cut. How would you guys feel about feeding back to your farmers or the farmers supplying you where their carcasses are? Is that something you do already in terms of the product they're bringing to you?
I don't understand the question.
I don't understand.
We've talked about, and I'll challenge you on this, and I know two of my farmers are going to send you some steaks because grass-fed is not dry or chewy or whatever. He defies Mr. Wisnet and Mr. Harris. But when I was producing, feedback from my buyer was always crucial in terms of how big my birds were and their fat and yield content. A lot of farmers aren't used to finishing, and I wonder if that's a challenge too, because previously we've been sending beef away to feedlots and other things, and we're now finishing them ourselves, and that's quite a big skill. So they're going to rely on some feedback from you guys in terms of what that carcass looks like. Is that something you guys could engage in?
Well, that's Department of Agriculture has a grading standard where they grade beef from no roll or standard all the way up to USDA prime. I'm sure most of you all are aware of it. And part of that standard is conformation of the animal. And when you get an animal that has a very good rounded conformation, that's got a flat back, that animal is going to harvest and yield substantially better than an animal that has got a sway back, is a little rounder at the bottom and more narrow at the top. So Gary Lance was talking about, Cannon Hill was talking about his belted Galloways yielding 62 or 63% from on the rail as a cold carcass to boneless meat, that's a pretty good yield. Usually it's right around 59 or 60. So depending on the breed and depending on the way it was raised, and certainly the way it was harvested, then I think that, that the yields can differ a little bit like that. Does that answer your question, Andrew? Yeah,
I think it does to some extent. I think it's in part of this working directly with farmers, letting the farmer know what you guys are looking for. Mm-hmm. And I think one of my key understandings is reconnecting the consumer with where their meat is coming from is crucial. It allows people to make transparent decisions. And the industry's been very clever at disconnecting the consumer from where their meat's produced. Does anybody have a sort of final quick roundup of where they think? Go ahead.
Well, on that point, we keep all detailed statistics on yields and for specific cuts of every animal we've bought, but neither our farmers nor our butchers are interested at all in seeing those numbers.
That's unfortunate, because for a farmer that's crucial data and information. Gentlemen, I think you've been fantastic, and to put yourselves up here, and look forward to you walking around the tent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.